We're live. It says we're live. Cool. I guess we're live.
Sweet.
The previews. Yeah, okay. Hello. There's 7 people watching this stream.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, people. Hi, friends. I have a special guest today for this episode, the only episode.
The first episode, there are going to be other meetings.
Yeah, there's like roughly a meeting every month. People say hi. Everyone says hi. The stream might not be the best quality because it's the first time, and I did just set up the internet to maybe be a bit faster, but here we are. It might be super laggy. Yeah, sweet. It's like lagging out on my end. That's great.
Best.
Cool. By the way, go to eastbayforeveryone.org/donate and chip in money, and we get a better internet connection to make this go faster. So, cool. Hi, people. Oh, sweet. That's awesome. So it must just be like my end and the feedback. Somebody asked earlier. Okay, now it's back. There we are. Yeah, that was weird. Anyways, internet sucks. Computers are bad. Don't use them. I don't ever advise anybody trying to use one of them. They're pretty bad. So, hello. Yes, we're back. So I am trying to do a series every month of going over the agenda of what I just got appointed to, which is the Association of Bay Area Government Regional Housing Needs Allocation Methodology Committee. It's not how it's not really how we decide what numbers cities have to build for housing, but rather how we decide what that number is. And this is sort of how, or it is in fact how Atherton got away with, what was it, 6 homes last year? Or 6 homes in the last cycle they had to do?
Something preposterous.
Something preposterous. It was a little ridiculous. But because the way that worked out was basically it was entirely jobs housing balance related. Atherton, being a city that it is, does not create jobs, so they didn't have to build any housing for the jobs they never created, because that's the world we live in. So my first meeting is going to be this Friday. It starts at 10 a.m. It runs for about 3 hours, probably a little less, a little more. And I just got the agenda yesterday morning, actually. So I'm gonna... Sound is good. Yeah, sorry about the screen. I'll try and make it look bigger by blowing it up and stuff. But mostly I'll just be talking and ranting and being angry, and you don't necessarily have to read the text, hopefully. The slides are big, so when we get to that part, you should be able to see them. So, yeah. Do you have questions? Anybody have questions before I start? No? Great.
Who is on this committee with you?
Oh, that's a good question. Thank you, caller. Let me show this, try and switch this stream. There. So you can kind of see there's like this long-ass roster of people here. This is the actual agenda now. I am one of maybe like 40-some, 30-some people. Cindy asks, how did I get appointed? That's an excellent question. Somebody had posted online, I think it was like MTC Twitter or something, said, hey, apply for this. Yeah, sweet. Yeah, hey, apply for this thing. We're doing RHNA numbers, and we need people in this committee, so be on it. And I applied. And then like a few months later, I hear from a friend, and they said, hey, you're in the running. Cool, I didn't do anything. And then one day I get an email saying I've been selected. So here I am. So if somebody says apply for a position on a commission, you should absolutely do it because you will probably get appointed.
Sometimes it actually works that way.
Yeah, it does. Like literally how I did. Yeah, sorry about the shitty quality. Again, we're at EBF right now. I'm doing the best I can with our shitty AT&T DSL internet. But yeah, there you go. Sweet. Oh wow, everybody discovered how to change the quality. That's great. Thank you, Scott. I love you. Love you. So yeah, so this is the agenda. I want to go back to the other my Chrome browser real quick. This thing. You can go to mtc.legistar.com to find agendas and meetings and those sorts of things. Oh, damn, Scott, that's tempting. Scott has fiber.
Maybe for future episodes.
Yeah, I'll probably do that for the next one. So if you go to mtc.legistar.com, which is on my browser right now, you can see all the meetings and agendas, and this is the one that is ABAG Housing Methodology Committee. It's for the 18th, this Friday, 10 a.m., and there's only like 3 tiny little items on there. I actually don't know. Oh, wait. I don't actually know what browser tab that thing is pulling this from. I can't change that. I'm not going to scroll down. Let's just go to the PDF. So, no more. And who knows, maybe what I'm doing right now is illegal, but fuck the cops. This is just evidence for reforming the Brown Act. Yeah, so the agenda. Starts off, welcomes, everybody goes around, introduces themselves, and then we go into the overview of what RHNA means, how the system works, and then we'll go over the chartering conversation, which is sort of why we have a methodology committee, why this thing exists in the first place instead of just MTC voting on it. And then we get to elect a chairperson. I will not be running for chair because I do not want to be the person who has to run these meetings. I might nominate Jesse Arreguin, though, because he's a really great meeting facilitator. If you've ever been to a Berkeley City Council meeting, they are great.
He does a very good job.
Yeah, he does a very good job of them. Oh, my monitor just unplugged. This is the one I'm using to make sure it's like streaming right. So it starts out, oh, and there's a lunch break in there, and then something about housing, visioning goals for the Bay Area. Yeah, Bart Board probably buys the same rules.
Bart Board definitely is covered by the Brown Act
because
earlier this year they got accused of a Brown Act violation by Livable California.
Oh, shocking. Yeah, I will post this video up to the channel. It's being recorded on my machine, and YouTube's making a copy of it. It is was an elected senator for Laney College, or the Peralta colleges for the associated students. I'm sure they can talk more about it. But yeah, they are beholden to the Brown Act, or they were when they were on there. Yeah. So scrolling down through the agenda a bit more. Zoom out. Boring stuff about accessibility and access and translations. Here's the actual item, the welcome item. We don't get to decide on whether or not we get welcomed. It just happens. And then we talk about the RHNA background, and it comes up with a bunch of slides right after this, and some long presentation. So the first item, the introduction to RHNA. It says, RHNA is a process that's part of housing element law, used to determine how many new homes, affordability, how much each local government has planned for, and its big planning system called the housing element. It's repeated about every 8 years, so this cycle I'm on is going to be from 2022 to 2030. We are just finishing up this current cycle, and it takes a long time to get from this methodology to a full RHNA allocation, which is why we've got about 2 years to get this through. And there's like a slide later on that shows the deeper process for that. But some other, I don't know, words in this that people may not be familiar with. Housing element law is, it's like state regulations that say every city must plan for housing in some form. That's really broad for a very complicated law. And RHNA is regional housing needs allocation, and the state gives each region, which in our case is the Bay Area, gives them a big number and says, here, you guys get to fight over how you split up that number. And that is me fighting over how to split up the number, and then we will split it up. These meetings go through, like, I think next April or something.
April or May.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them. So first document is like their staff report on what is RHNA. Again, you can like download this stuff from the mtc.legistar.com website. You can download all this stuff. It's all public information. I don't get anything special that the public doesn't. RHNA started in about 1969. The intent was to adequately plan to meet the housing. The role of the state is to identify a total number of homes. The role of the region is to take that number that the state gives us and give it out to local governments. And then the local governments themselves take that number and they have to make their zoning updated and have to prove to the state that they can meet those goals that we set. How they do that is like kind of beyond my role in this. I just decide how the number is going to be. They decide how they're going to meet it. It's interesting because they're not allowed to decide if they're going to meet the number. They are given a number, and then they can like later appeal it, which they often do.
There's an appeals process.
Yeah, there's an appeals process in there.
There's a ministerial appeals process. There's been some contestation over whether the courts have any say in adjudicating these disputes. Yeah,
because a lot of this RHNA stuff is like, it's not really legislative. And the weird way that like MTC ABAG is assembled is like all the members of it are just appointed people from different cities. Like Mayor Arreguín, like Berkeley City Council decided we're going to send Mayor Arreguín to be part of that. And so they're not really like elected by the people. If they're on our internet connection, it's not interacting with this right now. I fucked around with our internet connection to make this go as fast as we can. The second objective, promote infill development, which is homes in already developed areas, and socioeconomic equity, protect environmental and agricultural resources, encourage efficient development patterns, such as putting jobs close to housing, and achieve greenhouse gas reduction targets. That is, like, I think a really important thing. It's a lot more than jobs housing balance, is the greenhouse reduction and the equity focus. Again, Atherton got 6 units. We're going to change that. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again. I think it was like Cool Maps or something. There's like a UC Berkeley project that shows
cool climate maps.
Cool climate maps that shows like the carbon footprint of any community. Atherton's is huge. It's massive. It's like the red spot in the Bay Area.
I believe it has the highest per capita carbon footprint west of the Mississippi.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Or on the West Coast. Something like that. It's very, very bad.
Yeah, so that's kind of my angle for going about this, is specifically going after the greenhouse gas reduction targets. And,
thank you, Libby.
Yes. The next item, promote a thoughtful distribution of jobs and housing region-wide, including an improved balance between low-wage jobs and a number of affordable housing in each jurisdiction. I'm not sure what thoughtful means, but we're spending months on this, so there's a lot of thought happening. Balanced disproportionate... Yeah. Balance disproportionate household income distributions by allocating more market rate homes to lower income areas and more low income and very low income homes in opportunity rich areas. This is the part that like I actually do take some umbrage with, because like it's been a big discussion and debate about whether or not it's appropriate to push market rate housing into low income communities and sort of vice versa. My goal is to, essentially upzone Rockridge, which means not just low-income housing in Rockridge, but also market rate and moderate and all these different income levels, which this objective doesn't necessarily agree with. But again, part of this committee is that we can change these rules, provided I get enough people behind changing the rules. Which also brings me to the next point, this last one, which is actually new this cycle. Affirmatively furthering fair housing. And what that means is, like, there's, fair housing law, which says you can't be a racist dickbag in how you allocate housing. You can't, like, disadvantage one community over the other and such and such. And sure, that's fine, but affirmatively furthering is, like, the special extra words there. And that means that you have to actually prove that you are going to make housing fair. You can't just say, oh, well, we did some study and look at this. We're going to move these things around and we haven't had any complaints. Well, it's probably because you kicked out all the people who would otherwise complain because of your zoning. So they have to prove it. What that really means, affirmatively furthering, is still kind of undecided. The courts don't really have an answer for that yet. But that's kind of a big hook that I want to use to go after the climate goals in this. Because, again, climate footprints and impacts. And, think about, East Oakland and people living next out to the port and how much pollution comes from that. I live downtown, and, my windowsills, I'm not even all that far from the port. But my windowsills downtown, like every year, they just get covered in black soot. It's kind of disgusting. I'm going to die of cancer in like 6 years or something because of it. That's not equitable because you don't get that kind of stuff down in Atherton. Atherton has cleaner air. They don't have particulate pollution as much. That's an inequity. We got to fix that. Let's see. So those are like the 5 objectives of RHNA is more housing, especially not in sprawl, be thoughtful about the distribution, balance income distributions, and affirmatively further fair housing, which I think all of the first couple are essentially repeating the final one of affirmatively furthering fair housing. There's a lot of opportunity in the Bay Area. It behooves us to make sure the most number of people can use that opportunity, and that opportunity is kind of distributed more equally, more equitably across the region, which it currently isn't. So, next section of this report, conceptual overview of the RHNA process. It starts off as first circle, regional housing need determination. That's the state. It says, here's how many homes you got to build. Actually, I'm going to skip ahead in this because there's a slide. Yeah, here's the actual slides. This one shows a lot better. Then we have the final allocation, and that's like, these are the numbers for the next 8 years we got to hit. And then once we have those out, there's local housing element updates. That's where cities rezone. And again, this is why it takes about 2-3 years to get this stuff done, because there's 101 cities, jurisdictions, all that in the Bay Area. It's 101 general plans that got to get updated. There's 101 zoning plans that got to get updated.
101 EIRs.
101 EIRs to update all these things. When you update your general plan, you also have to like notify the state Department of Housing and Community Development like 6 months in advance, or rather, you make your update, you send it to them 6 months before you're going to vote on it. There's a lot of process involved. As we all know, hail the process. If we didn't have this
Trust the process.
Yeah, trust the process. If we didn't have this process, we'd be in a housing crisis. So thank goodness. You can go back up to this other. See, I'm making sure I'm not skipping anything in this PDF. So this next section is like the meat of the whole committee, the allocation methodology. What does that mean? It is a formula that divvies up the Bay Area's allocation and calculates total number of units, focuses a lot, as good as they are, they focus a lot on Oakland, they focus a lot in like deep Oakland. Yeah, upzone upload speeds, please. That's actually an interesting thing, because like, funny you mentioned that, because like part of this does mean that like we could decide that internet connectivity is an important component of the methodology, and then go out, ask staff, go out and just measure upload speeds or whatever, and say, okay, if the city has an average upload speed of this, then they get this amount of number. Again, all this has to like boil down into one big formula.
Fiber-oriented density bonus.
Yeah. Fiber-oriented density bonus. If you go through the ABAG website and you find like the last cycle, you can download this massive spreadsheet, and it does in fact come with a warning. It says if you try and open this on a computer before some year, it will crash because it's such a huge fucking spreadsheet. It's terrible, and that is actually the formula is a spreadsheet, which is a lot of formulas put together. The foundation going on in this document, foundation for this formula is a pattern of expected growth in population, households, and jobs from the region's long-range plan, Plan Bay Area 2050. Plan Bay Area 2050 has been this long process that Bay Area Metro has been working on for a long time. It's kind of like the long-range plan for what the Bay Area will look like in 2050. And it includes things like transportation and housing and all the other parts that make the world work. And so that sort of, it's like this like kind of cyclical relationship where Plan Bay Area invents a whole bunch of stuff based off of the last RHNA stuff, which then goes back into Plan Bay Area, which like goes back and forth. So like if you're bad at your RHNA numbers, Plan Bay Area will come in and say, actually, you guys fucked up last time, we're going to upzone the shit out of you. Which is like not exactly how it works, given it's like a non-binding document and it's entirely just for planning and whatever. That's a whole separate I could talk. Which like if you look at the slides a few slides later, it's a slightly different list because it's kind of a huge document. So I don't know if it's just hard to keep consistent or whatever. Either way, whatever we talk about on Friday will be like the definitive list. And then we can change them because, Robert's rules and all that. Other factors. We have to consider the lack of capacity or extra capacity of sewer or water service due to decisions outside of jurisdiction's control. If we give, this is going to come up. If we give Atherton, or let's give Piedmont an extra 100,000 units, they will come out and say, well, we can't do that because we don't run East Bay Municipal EDMUD, the East Bay Municipal Utility District. And so because of that, we can't provide enough water because we don't have control over that. And then we'd have to say, all right, you got us, you slippy people. The next objective we have to consider is availability of land suitable for urban development. That's a really vague one, but it's also an argument that some cities come out and say, oh, we can't build affordable housing here because the land's not suitable, which, look at how San Francisco is doing that. It basically means, well, this land's not radioactive. We can't build stuff there. That's stupid. Number 4, lands protected from urban development under existing federal or state programs. Unfortunately, I can't just go and say, let's build a bunch of homes in the Presidio. A lot of it's federal land. That's way beyond our control. That sucks. But that's fine because there's a lot of Atherton, as it turns out. County policies to preserve prime agricultural land. Alameda County in particular is a really huge county, and Contra Costa, thank you. They're both really big counties, as it turns out. There's still a lot of farms, and they've got policies to prevent development of that, prevent us from paving over more orchards and stuff, which is good. We should have that. We should be building in the core of the city and densifying places, not building over farmland. Another factor, the distribution of household growth in Plan Bay Area 2050. And like I said, that's where this comes in. Plan Bay Area 2050 looks at the Bay Area and says, we're going to have this kind of, economy in the future. We'll have these kinds of workers, industry over here, this and that. We got to have housing next to here and those sorts of things. And opportunities to maximize use of transit and existing transportation infrastructure. So this is something that's in Plan Bay Area 2050. Seventh one, I don't understand this one completely, but agreements to direct growth towards incorporated areas. I think that's some kind of urban growth boundary thing. I don't actually know, but it kind of sounds suspicious because it's agreements. What does that mean? Does that mean we just sweet talk some mayor into not being mad at us or something? We also have to consider the loss of deed-restricted affordable units. That might be a huge fucking problem in the future because I believe there's a whole bunch of LIHTC homes. Yeah, a bunch of low-income housing tax credits, LIHTC, that is going to go away in a couple of years.
Covenants are expiring.
Yeah, it's coming up very soon, and that's going to just destroy a whole bunch of affordable housing because they've got time limits on them. So we have to consider that. We also have to consider, I think this one's definitely a new one. Households paying...
From SB 828.
SB 828, thank you. Households paying more than 30% and more than 50% of their income in rent. I pay roughly 50% of my paycheck on rent. That's a thing we have to consider, which we didn't used to. Another thing, the rate of overcrowding, which I don't think is actually really well defined in any of the laws about what the overcrowding means, but we gotta consider it.
Southern California Association of Governments tried to make the case that the natural overcrowding rate in their area was higher because of the high number of immigrants who have a cultural affinity for more crowded housing conditions. And I don't think that went over particularly well with the state.
No. Wow. So that's the thing. We have to consider the housing needs of farm workers. There's not a whole lot of farming in the Bay Area, but they're still here, and we have to consider, and this kind of ties in with preserving agricultural land.
I guess ABAG includes Napa, Sonoma, and some other counties that have substantial agricultural lands.
I think we lost the connection again. Oh, there it goes. Oh, they're back. This is kind of irritating. Scott, I'm totally going to stream from your place next month. I hope we're back. Where was I? Yeah, housing needs of farm workers. That's a thing we got to consider. Housing needs generated by a university within this jurisdiction. So like Stanford down there or UC Berkeley. They've got students to house. We have to think about the students. Think of the children. Think of the students. We have to think about units lost during a state of emergency that have yet to be replaced. Santa Rosa, the fires, California generally. I guess that's a new one. We haven't really considered those. And finally, the region's greenhouse gas targets. That's the thing that we have to consider, which I didn't realize was in there until late last night when I was previewing this. So that's a big thing, I think, is greenhouse gas targets. How do we reduce them? Also ties into transit. And like, again, look at those cool climate maps. You look at Atherton. How do we make Atherton green instead of red? Well, it turns out we, built a bunch of housing. Because they are right next to Palo Alto. And all these other like good tech investment hubs and whatnot down there. So these 14 factors are what we're supposed to consider when developing these numbers. If you go back and you look at the last cycle, the big ass spreadsheet, there's like a whole, one whole page in there that's just like, here's, how many jobs these places have created. Here's how many homes these people have, or these places have lost. And like, they actually quantify everything down. Because again, this all has to work into a formula. So we have to take the concept of overcrowding and turn it into some number, or rather some factor in a formula that outputs, 3 million homes for Atherton. We have to think about these things. It's a math problem. All this is, I've been appointed to a committee to write a formula. Finally, I get to write math again. Finally, I get to use my computer science degree for good. Those are the big 14 factors that we have to consider in this, and that's kind of like the meat of this. Is we're going to be debating for months on end, how do we turn each of these factors into some part of this giant polynomial formula, some factor in this. I don't know. We'll find out. And then those are the principles, the factors we have to consider. The next parts of this document are just like, here's the steps. So after we make our thing, there's the draft and the final allocations, then the local housing element updates, and then we wait 8 more years and we do it again. So here's another part that a lot of people don't completely understand about RHNA, in my experience, is there's this thing called subregions. And a subregion is you've got RHNA process that takes place for the entire Bay Area. And then inside this entire region is like a smaller subregion. There's a couple of them. One's down in the peninsula. I believe Atherton is actually part of this. And we don't really decide. Atherton sit through this presentation on Friday. Yeah, so here's what's new this cycle from the last cycle. 1, there's a greater emphasis on social equity. That's great. 2, there's a higher than expected total regional housing need. It's like, oh shit, we realized we're in a housing shortage since, what was the last one written, like 2010?
I think really we're pushing over 30 years now of housing crisis in California.
Yeah. It's always higher than expected, as if we are somehow surprised that we're underbuilding. Expanded Housing and Community Development Department oversight on methodology and allocations. Previously, a lot of these numbers could just like be thrown out there, and these committees would come together and say, all right, Atherton, you've got 6 homes, and then nobody would like check that. Nobody would like look at that, or rather, a lot of people looked at it and were like, that seems problematic. But nobody had the power to do anything about it. Now, there's been a bunch of laws passed in Sacramento that change this so that the State Department in Sacramento of Housing and Community Development has to approve a lot of these things. And then they can look at that and say, okay, we see that you're trying to be a bunch of racist dickbags. You're not affirmatively furthering fair housing. That's a tongue twister. You're not doing the thing you're supposed to be doing, so we're going to reject this and say, no, you can't do that. Which is really interesting, because now we finally have oversight over this process, which is great, I think. A lot more factors to consider in allocations this cycle, like overpayment, overcrowding. I guess overpayment is like a way to say rent burden with fewer characters. Greenhouse gases, jobs housing fit, which I've been told is another interesting idea of jobs housing fit, which is different than jobs housing balance. Do you know much about this?
So I think jobs housing fit tries to take into account the job wage and rent to try to match the available housing to the available jobs so that people can afford to live near where they work based on what wage they're earning.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about it. I saw some people tweeting about it last week, and I jumped into the thread and I said, hey, I'm very interested in learning more about this. And then I was told that that was considered an act of terrorism.
I believe it was a certain tag-in that was considered the.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, okay, that's true. Okay, so it was the one guy whose name I'm not going to talk about right here. But I'm sure if you look at the Twitter thread, maybe my tweets are still there. And the last stuff that's new is new requirements for identifying eligible sites for housing elements. Part of this whole process is that once a city has a RHNA allocation, once they have their number, they have to update their zoning map to prove here's some of the sites, specific parcel. Okay, now we're back, I guess. Or maybe it was just like we weren't saying anything, so it was really quiet. So here's what RHNA's been since 1999 to 2017. Here's each of the cycles. There's one in 2006, 2014, and this current one that ends in 2023. For 1999 to 2006, the first dot-com bubble, we hit 92% of our targets. Whether or not the targets were good is separate. After that, during the Great Recession, the time of shedding and cold rocks, we all hit 57% of our targets. And then after that, during this longest expansionary period of the American economy in history, where, everybody is supposed to have a great life and all that stuff, we only hit 65% of that number. And as you can see, you can look at these numbers here, very low income, 44, then 29, then 9%. Well, that's because we took away a lot of funding tools to make these things happen, which is the strange paradox of RHNA, where, yeah.
I would also like to draw everyone's attention to the fact that the total need identified for the most recent RHNA cycle from 2015 to 2023 is substantially less than the total need identified for the previous two. So the powers that be in the previous RHNA cycle predicted we're going to need less housing now in the Bay Area than we have in the new housing than we have in the past. And I think we all know it's worked out rather the opposite of that.
Yeah. We all know that human population just kind of met its apex with the release of the Matrix in the 90s, and since then we've just been slowly declining. So, yeah. Okay, I think we're reconnected. Yeah, I'm definitely using Scott's Place next time. So we got 15, 13 minutes left. So I'll just go over these last couple slides. Role of the Methodology Committee. So there's us, and then we actually advise, like I said, we advise a special committee of ABAG, the Regional Planning Committee, who then makes their final legal allocations and all that. They've got the legal force, we're just the advisors. And then they send it to the full ABAG Executive Board, the ABAG EB, and they vote on the RHNA and the angle to the angle and all those TLAs, three-letter acronyms. And then we have a thing. Yeah, here's more slides. Here's what factors you got to consider. Questions, with a picture of what questions may look like.
It's a mystery box.
Yeah, mystery box. And then we talk about the chartering of the methodology committee. This is more the meat of it, and this is some other interesting stuff. So we've got these meeting facilitators from this group called Civic Edge Consulting. And I don't know who they are, but they are going to facilitate the meetings. I don't know what that means. Our facilitators are not housing policy experts. It's interesting that they point that out to us. Also, the facilitators are Bay Area residents who care about our communities and want to support us in doing this work. I'm not really sure what this will get into, but we'll hear about it later. Then there's a chartering conversation. Why do we need this? Then we do introductions via some bullshit app thing called Poll Everywhere. Talk about roles and responsibilities, the decision-making process, which is the last thing I want to talk about, which is actually really interesting, I think. And then norms. So, why an HMC? Well, we just spent an hour talking about that. Introductions. You know who I am. Roles and responsibilities. Our members, all we have to do is basically be at the meetings and be prepared and attend them and interact. Be thoughtful. Staff is it. So this is the part I really want to talk about, is the decision-making process. It says dialogue is key for the HMC, and it's a modified consensus decision-making model. Helps support collaboration. And it's got this saying called a fist of five. It provides visual of excitement or lack of any decision. The text on this is really super small, but it basically means a 5 says, yes, I am so totally behind this, I'm here for it, let's make it happen. 4 is a little less enthusiastic, 3 is 2 is I actually don't like the idea, but I'm not going to get in the way of it. 1 is I hate all of you, but I'm not going to get in the way of it. And a fist means I am blocking this, which I'm still kind of unsure how that's going to turn out. And the block in my background of anarchist organizing, consensus decision-making, is that you will stop the process until that person is happy, and that person makes a good faith effort to try and resolve the conflict. But what's interesting in this next slide is here's the different outcomes of the votes. One is there are no fists, so it just passes. Okay, even if a lot of people don't like the decision, it passes. And then if there's 9 or more fists, the decision is blocked, and we got to resolve the block. Question I have is, what if you have 1 fist, or 2 fists, or 8 fists? It's not really clear.
There's quite a few numbers between 0 and 9.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen with that. But I think this is really important they include that in here. If you block a decision, you take responsibility to find a decision. It's not appropriate, and part of the decision-making process in consensus is that you have to believe that the process, it really is trust the process. You have to believe that the process is going to work. You have to have faith in it. You have to want it to work. When you block a thing, it can't be to stop the process. It has to be so we can make progress on the decision. We puts it together, and then we decide we're going to adopt the norms, which I'm guessing are more like a code of conduct. Yeah, you just count the fingers, and a block is 0 fingers. There's some other part in this big document too that talks about like the number of votes. Like each 5 points is in fact 5 votes in some parts of this process, and then you have to use this to like do stuff. Bullet 1, yeah, bullet 1 accounts for the fists. So this is roughly what's going to happen over the next couple of months. First, our vision. Then we figure out the factors. Then we refine the factors. And then we talk about the factors even more. And then we make our recommendation. And that's like in April or something. This Friday, all we're doing is basically outlining our goals for this, which is where I get to be on a bully pulpit and come out and say, I think Atherton should do their fair share. And then, I get boos and hiss from everyone and whatever, and it's like, haha, suck it. And we vote, and then we go home, and I get lunch. Then there's public comment, we do wrap up, get some feedback, and then that's kind of the day. And then we adjourn, and the rest of this document here is just more of the slides, but in a different font. Oh, and finally, then we vote on the election of a committee chairperson. Normally, I would jump at the opportunity to chair something like this, except that I do want to be political on this. And if you're a chair of a body like this, you can't, it's not really, I wouldn't say it's not appropriate, but it's certainly not helpful to, be vested with that kind of power of running the meeting and then trying to run the meeting to get what you want. You're supposed to be neutral. You're supposed to be impartial to, a certain degree. I think that's important. This is why I want Jesse Arreguín to be it, because he's really good at running a meeting, honestly. Him and I disagree a lot on a lot of policy things, but not a whole lot compared to some of the other people that are going to be on this committee. So I think he's a pretty good happy medium. I think he's already president of ABAG or vice president or something. I
think vice, but I do think that's right, that he has a leadership role.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would support him being on there. He wouldn't get in the way of us, and he wouldn't try and throw people under the bus. He would be pretty fair. I trust him on that. So that's
Jordan. I don't think that's a wise choice.
Chair Elkland, 2020.
Pat Eklund of Novato.
Yeah, let's not do that. Anything besides that. So. That is what Rena's gonna be. Reconnection successful. Okay.
Hey.
So that was the hour talking about this. We're reconnected now. I think I'm just gonna upload the recording of this separately because I recorded it and there's no gaps in it. I'm also gonna do this next one at Scott's place where there seems to be better internet. Ouch! Just cut myself. That's Rena. If there's any other questions, you've got 3 minutes to tell me. Otherwise, I will be logging the fuck off, enjoying the rest of my holiday this week.
Hey.
Yeah. The next one, I think, will be towards the evening next month, probably the same week of the next meeting, which is like the 28th or something, or 16th.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's sometime in mid-November.
Yeah.
I'll just say for everybody, our wonderful members of the viewing public, as this process progresses, there will be opportunities for you to provide input, to give spoken and written comment, and we, or at least I, will be asking you to do that. Because I think this is a really important process that is going to have a significant impact on the future of the Bay Area and whether we have enough homes in the places that we need them. And really an opportunity to shape all of that at a very fundamental level.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thanks everybody for watching. This was super fun. There were like 11 people watching, which is the most people I've ever had watch anything I've ever do on a stream before. Thanks. This was great. Share it with your friends. Remember, like, share, subscribe, all that. Send me Bitcoin or Buttcoin or whatever currency you want. I've got a Patreon. Throw stuff at it. Also, donate to Carla and East Bay for Everyone. Thanks.
Bye.